The cargo hauler shook violently as another explosion ripped through the engine compartment. David Reed gripped the control stick with both hands, fighting to keep the nose up as alarms screamed around him. Red warning lights painted the cockpit in harsh colors. The moon below grew larger in the viewport, coming up fast. Too fast. Come on, come on, David muttered through clenched teeth. He pulled back hard on the stick. The ship groaned in protest, but responded, leveling out just enough. The crystalline forest rushed up to meet him. He had seconds to pick a landing spot. There, a clearing between the massive crystal formations. It would have to do. The impact drove the breath from his lungs. Metal shrieked as the hull tore through crystal trees. The ship bounced once, twice, then slid sideways before finally grinding to a stop. David sat in the sudden silence, ears ringing. He took inventory. Arms moved. Legs moved. Ribs hurt, but nothing felt broken. Lucky he unbuckled and stumbled to the rear compartment. Smoke poured from the engine section. David grabbed the fire suppression handle and pulled. Foam hissed and bubbled, smothering the flames. When the smoke cleared, he assessed the damage. The main drive was slag. The backup power cells had ruptured. His distress beacon blinked weakly before dying completely. David leaned against the bulkhead and closed his eyes. The next scheduled ship through this sector would pass in 3 weeks. Maybe 4. He was stuck here until then. At least the moon had breathable air. He had checked that much before the crash. Small mercies. Over the next 2 days, David established a basic camp near the wreck. He salvaged what he could from the ship. Food supplies, water recyclers, tools, spare parts. The crystalline forest around him hummed with strange energy. The crystals caught sunlight and threw it in rainbow patterns across the ground. Beautiful but lonely. On the 3rd day, David heard the sound. A high-pitched chirping, almost like a bird but deeper. It came from somewhere near the crash site. He followed it around a massive crystal outcropping and stopped dead. A creature lay trapped beneath a section of his ship's hull plating. It was covered in dark green scales that shimmered when it moved. Leathery wings, one bent at an unnatural angle, spread out from its back. A long tail with small spikes twitched weakly. The head turned toward him, and golden eyes locked onto his face. Dragon. He was looking at a dragon hatchling. The creature hissed, and a small gout of flame shot from its mouth. A warning. David raised his hand slowly and spoke in a soft voice. Easy there. I'm not going to hurt you. The dragon watched him with those intelligent eyes. David could see pain in them. Fear too. Let me help. Please. He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible. The dragon tensed, but didn't try to flame him again. David examined the hull plating. It had crushed one of the dragon's wings and pinned its back legs. The creature must have been curious about the crash and gotten too close when debris fell. I need to lift this, David said, still talking softly. It's going to hurt when I do, but then you'll be free. Understand? The dragon tilted its head, watching him. Did it understand? Hard to tell. David retrieved a hydraulic jack from his salvage pile. He positioned it carefully under the hull plating and began pumping. The jack hissed and the metal groaned upward. The dragon whimpered, a pitiful sound. David worked faster. Almost there, he whispered. With a final heave, the plating lifted high enough. The dragon pulled itself free, dragging the injured wing. It crawled a few feet away and collapsed, breathing hard. David approached slowly. The dragon watched him but didn't flee. Up close, he could see it was young, maybe the size of a large dog. Its scales were dull, probably from stress and injury. The bent wing looked painful. You need food, David said. He went to his supplies and returned with emergency rations. He tore open a protein bar and held it out. The dragon sniffed cautiously, then snatched the food with surprising speed. It chewed and swallowed, then looked at David expectantly. Hungry, huh? David smiled and offered another bar. This time the dragon took it more gently from his hand. They sat together in the shadow of the wrecked ship. David ate his own ration while the dragon finished 3 more bars. As the sun began to set, painting the crystals in gold and orange, the dragon curled up near David's makeshift shelter. It didn't leave. David found himself talking to it while he worked on sorting salvage parts. "I'm going to call you Flicker," he said, "because your eyes catch the light like that." "Flicker, you like it?" The dragon's tail twitched, and those golden eyes blinked slowly at him. That night, David slept fitfully. He kept one eye on his supplies, unsure if the dragon would steal food or attack. But when dawn came, he found Flicker curled up near the shelter entrance. And something else. His scattered tools had been arranged in a neat line, organized by size. David stared at the tools, then at the sleeping dragon. Flicker's eyes opened and met his. There was something in that gaze, something more than animal instinct. "What are you?" David whispered. Flicker yawned, showing rows of small sharp teeth, then stood and stretched like a cat. The dragon limped over to the tool line and tapped one with a claw. "A wrench." Then it looked at David as if to say, "See what I did?" David laughed despite himself. "Okay, Flicker. Okay, I see you. Let's figure this out together." He had no idea that decision would change everything. David spent the morning taking apart the damaged communications array. Wires and circuits lay spread across a flat crystal surface he was using as a workbench. His hands moved automatically, sorting components into piles. Working kept his mind from dwelling on how alone he was. Except he wasn't alone anymore. Flicker sat 3 feet away, head tilted, watching every movement David made. The dragon's golden eyes tracked each wire, each tool, each motion. When David picked up a circuit board and examined it, Flicker leaned forward. When David set it down, the dragon's gaze followed it to the pile. "This is boring for you, isn't it?" David said. He didn't expect an answer. Talking to himself had become normal over the past few days. Talking to Flicker felt only slightly stranger. The dragon made a soft chirping sound and moved closer. Its injured wing was healing well thanks to the splint David had fashioned from ship materials. Flicker could move around easily now, though flying was still impossible. David picked up a small wrench and held it up. "Wrench," he said, tapping it with his finger. "Wrench." He felt silly talking to a dragon like it was a student. But something in those intelligent eyes made him want to try. Flicker chirped again and reached out with one clawed foot. David handed over the wrench. The dragon held it carefully, examining it from all angles. Then Flicker set it down and looked at David expectantly. "Okay, so you can hold things," David muttered. He picked up a screwdriver. "Screwdriver." He made an exaggerated twisting motion. "You turn screws with it." He demonstrated on a loose panel. Flicker watched closely. David handed over the screwdriver. The dragon gripped it awkwardly at first, then adjusted its grip to match how David had held it. Flicker pressed the tip against the crystal surface and tried to twist. The motion was clumsy but clearly intentional. David sat back, surprised. "You're copying me." It should have been obvious. The organized tools that first morning had been assigned. But seeing Flicker deliberately mimic his actions drove the point home. This wasn't just a smart animal. This was something more. Over the next hour, David introduced more tools. Pliers, guide cutters, measuring tape. Each time, he demonstrated what the tool did. Each time, Flicker watched and then tried to copy the motion. The dragon's success rate was about 50%, but the fact that it tried it all amazed David. "All right," David said finally. "Let's try something harder." He gathered several pieces of scrap metal and created a simple puzzle. 3 pieces that fit together in only one specific way. "Watch." He disassembled the pieces and then put them back together slowly, making sure Flicker saw each step. Then he took them apart again and slid the pieces toward the dragon. "Your turn." Flicker looked at the pieces, then at David. The dragon nudged one piece with its snout, then picked it up with careful claws. It tried to fit it to another piece. Wrong angle. Flicker adjusted and tried again. Still wrong. The dragon made a frustrated huffing sound. "Take your time," David said softly. "Look at the shapes." Flicker set the pieces down and stared at them. David could almost see the gears turning in that reptilian head. Then the dragon tried again, this time rotating one piece before joining it to another. It fit. Flicker chirped excitedly and grabbed the third piece. Within seconds, the puzzle was complete. David felt his throat tighten with emotion. Good job, Flicker. That was really good. He meant it. The dragon's tail swished back and forth like an excited dog. It touched the completed puzzle with one claw and then looked at David with what could only be described as pride. From that day forward, their routine changed. David would work on building a signal amplifier from the salvage parts. Flicker would watch, and David would explain what he was doing. Not because he thought the dragon understood every word, but because it felt right. Because Flicker paid such close attention. I need to boost the signal strength, David said while soldering wires together. My regular distress beacon was too weak. But if I can build this amplifier and connect it to the ship's remaining power, I can send a signal that will reach the nearest trade route. He pointed to a diagram he had sketched on a piece of hull plating. See? Signal goes here, gets amplified here, transmits there. Flicker studied the diagram with intense focus. Then the dragon walked over to the pile of salvaged parts and started nosing through them. After a moment, Flicker returned with a specific component, a power coupling David had set aside earlier. The dragon sat on top of the diagram, right where David had drawn the amplifier section. David stared. That's exactly right. I need that piece for this part. He looked at Flicker with new eyes. You understood the diagram. Flicker chirped and sat down, looking pleased with itself. Okay then, David said slowly. Okay, let's really work together. He grabbed another piece. Can you hold this steady while I weld? He positioned the component and gestured for Flicker to hold it. The dragon carefully gripped the piece with both front claws, holding it exactly where David needed it. David picked up his welding torch and paused. This is going to be bright and hot. Don't let go, but be careful. Flicker's eyes narrowed slightly, but the dragon didn't move. David worked quickly, joining the pieces with precise welds. When he finished, he turned off the torch and stepped back. You can let go now. Flicker released the piece and examined the weld joint with interest. The dragon leaned close, nostrils flaring, smelling the hot metal. We make a good team, David said. He meant it as a joke, but realized it was true. They did work well together. Over the following days, they built the signal amplifier piece by piece. Flicker learned to hand David specific tools when asked. The dragon learned which components generated heat and needed careful handling. Most surprising of all, Flicker started solving problems. When David struggled with a power distribution issue, he woke one morning to find Flicker had rearranged several components on the workbench. At first, David was annoyed, thinking the dragon had messed up his work. Then he looked closer. Flicker's arrangement actually solved the power flow problem David had been fighting with for 2 days. How did you figure that out? David asked, looking from the arrangement to Flicker's smug expression. The dragon just chirped and returned to watching David work. That's when David truly understood. He wasn't teaching a clever pet. He was working with a partner. 3 weeks had passed since the crash. David wiped sweat from his forehead and studied the nearly complete signal amplifier. It was ugly, a mess of salvage components held together with improvised welds and wire. But it should work. Had to work. Flicker sat beside him, holding a stabilizer rod steady, while David tightened the final connections. The dragon's wing had healed completely now. Yesterday, Flicker had managed short flights around the camp. The sight of the dragon soaring between the crystal formations had filled David with unexpected joy. Almost done, David said. He reached for the power coupling, but it was just out of reach. Can you hand me that red component? The one with the 3 prongs. Without hesitation, Flicker released the stabilizer rod, grabbed the exact piece David needed, and placed it in his open palm. The exchange was so natural, so smooth, that David barely registered how remarkable it was anymore. This was normal now. Working together, communicating, David connected the power coupling and sat back. That's it. We're ready to test. He looked at Flicker. If this works, a ship will come get me. Soon. The dragon tilted its head. Did Flicker understand what rescue meant? That David would leave. Come on, David said, pushing the thought away. Let's fire it up. He routed power from the ship's emergency cells to the amplifier. Lights flickered green across the jury-rigged control panel. David held his breath and activated the transmitter. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a steady pulse began, the distress signal broadcasting into space. Yes, David pumped his fist. We did it, Flicker. We actually did it. He turned to the dragon, grinning to Flicker's tail, swished excitedly. The dragon made a series of chirps that David had learned meant happiness. They had done it together. That night, David couldn't sleep. He lay in his shelter, staring at the crystal ceiling he had built with Flicker's help. A ship would come, maybe in days, maybe in a week, but someone would pick up the signal and come. He would be rescued. He would go home, but he glanced at Flicker, curled up near the entrance. The dragon's chest rose and fell with steady breaths. What would happen to Flicker when David left? The thought troubled him more than he wanted to admit. The next morning brought unexpected company. David heard the ship before he saw it, a deep thrumming that rattled the crystals. He ran from the shelter and looked up. A vessel descended through the atmosphere, much larger than his cargo hauler. A survey ship based on the configuration. Flicker, David called. The dragon bounded over, looking up at the approaching ship with curiosity rather than fear. Stay close to me, okay? We don't know who these people are. The ship landed 100 yards from the camp. Its engines kicked up clouds of crystal dust that sparkled in the sunlight. A hatch opened and 4 figures emerged. David's stomach tightened. Aliens. He had seen plenty of trade stations, but never alone on an uninhabited moon. The group approached cautiously. Leading them was a being covered in sleek fur, walking upright on powerful legs. Behind came something that looked like an insect the size of a human, its multiple eyes reflecting light like gemstones. Third was a crystalline being that caught and refracted sunlight in dizzying patterns. The fourth was another insect-like creature, smaller than the first. The furred alien raised a hand in greeting. I am Captain Oren of the Survey Vessel Wanderer. We received your distress signal. Are you injured? I'm fine, David said. My ship crashed. I've been waiting for rescue. Captain Oren's gaze shifted to Flicker, who stood at David's side. The captain's expression changed instantly, going from friendly concern to shock. Step away from that creature immediately. What? No, this is Flicker. It's okay, Flicker won't hurt you. That is a dragon, the crystalline being said, its voice like wind chimes. Dragons are extremely dangerous. They have destroyed 3 colony attempts in this sector. Flicker isn't dangerous, David protested. Look, we've been living together for weeks. Working together. He gestured to the camp, the signal amplifier, all the structures he and Flicker had built. The insect navigator clicked its mandibles nervously. Dragons are not intelligent. They are territorial predators. That one is young, probably separated from its nest. But when adults find it, they will attack. You're wrong about the intelligence part, David said firmly. Flicker understands tools, solves problems. We built that signal amplifier together. He pointed to the device, still broadcasting its steady pulse. Captain Oren stepped closer, but kept a wary eye on Flicker. You built this. The dragon may have been present, but it is impossible for it to have helped. Dragons do not use tools. They barely qualify as sentient. Watch, David said. He picked up a complex locking mechanism he had designed as a test. Flicker, can you open this? The dragon took the mechanism in careful claws and examined it. Within seconds, Flicker had manipulated the interlocking pieces in the correct sequence. The lock clicked open. Flicker set it down and looked at the aliens with what David swore was smugness. The crystalline being made a sound like cracking ice. That proves nothing. You trained it like an animal learning tricks. This isn't a trick, David said, frustration rising in his voice. Flicker thinks, plans, creates. You're not seeing what's right in front of you. What I see, Captain Oren said carefully, is a human who has become attached to a dangerous creature. We appreciate your situation, but we cannot allow that dragon on our ship. We will take you to safety, but the creature stays here. Then I stay too, David said without hesitation. The aliens looked at each other. Captain Oren spoke slowly, as if to a child. That is not rational. You cannot survive here permanently. Eventually your supplies will run out. I'll figure it out. I'm not leaving Flicker alone. David crossed his arms. This is foolish sentiment, the insect navigator said. It is an animal. No, David said quietly but firmly. Flicker is family, and you don't abandon family. The word hung in the air. Family. David realized he meant it. Over the past weeks, Flicker had become more than a companion or a work partner. The dragon was family in the way that mattered. They had survived together, built together, trusted each other. Captain Oren studied David for a long moment. Then the captain looked at Flicker, really looked. The dragon sat calmly, watching the exchange with intelligent eyes. Not attacking, not fleeing, just waiting to see what would happen. You truly believe this creature is sapient, Oren said. It wasn't a question. I know it is, David replied. Then prove it. The crystalline being, who introduced itself as Prism, returned from the survey ship carrying a metal box. This is a standard intelligence assessment device, Prism said, its voice chiming like struck glass. We use it to evaluate potentially sapient species. It requires understanding of physics, spatial reasoning, and tool manipulation. Prism set the box on a flat crystal surface. If your dragon can solve this without assistance, we will reconsider our position. The being opened the box, revealing a complex puzzle. Gears, levers, and weighted components were arranged in a seemingly random configuration. The goal is to move the red sphere from point A to point B. The catch is that each component affects the others. Solve it incorrectly, and the sphere drops into this trap chamber. Game over. David looked at the puzzle and felt his stomach sink. It looked incredibly difficult. He glanced at Flicker. The dragon was already approaching the box, head tilted with curiosity. I can't help, David said to Flicker. You have to do this yourself. Can you try? Flicker chirped once and turned full attention to the puzzle. The dragon walked around the box, examining it from all angles. Captain Oren and the other aliens watched in silence. After a full minute of observation, Flicker reached out with one claw and gently pushed a lever. A gear began to turn. The dragon watched the motion carefully, tracking how the gear connected to other components. Then Flicker adjusted a weighted arm, compensating for the gear's rotation. David held his breath. Flicker was approaching the puzzle methodically, testing each piece to understand how it functioned. This wasn't random trial and error. This was systematic problem solving. The red sphere sat in its starting position, held by a delicate metal cage. Flicker studied the cage mechanism, and then manipulated a series of small switches in rapid sequence. The cage opened. The sphere rolled onto a track. Now came the hard part. The track split into multiple paths, only one of which led to the goal. The others led to the trap. Flicker paused, eyes moving across the various routes. The dragon picked up a small tool from the puzzle kit and used it to test one path. The track shifted slightly. Wrong path. Flicker adjusted and tried another route. This time the track locked into place with a satisfying click. The aliens leaned forward despite themselves. Even the skeptical insect navigator seemed interested now. Flicker guided the sphere along the track using the various levers and gears. Each movement was precise, controlled. When one gear threatened to spin too fast, Flicker used a brake mechanism to slow it. When a weight needed balancing, the dragon added a counterweight from the puzzle components. The sphere rolled closer to the goal. Just a few more moves. Flicker made one final adjustment, releasing a spring-loaded platform. The sphere launched through the air in a perfect arc and dropped into the goal chamber. A green light flashed on the box. Success. The clearing was silent except for the hum of the ship's idling engines. Flicker looked at the aliens and made a chirping sound that David recognized. It meant, see? I told you. Prism approached the puzzle box and examined it closely. Remarkable. The solution was not only correct, but efficient. The dragon completed it in less time than I would have estimated for an average adult of any known sapient species. It gets better, David said. He was feeling bold now. Flicker, can you show them the modification you made to the signal amplifier? The dragon bounded over to the amplifier and pointed with one claw to a section David hadn't built. Flicker had added an additional power routing system that made the signal 20% stronger. David had left it in place because it worked perfectly. Captain Oren examined the modification. The dragon did this? Without instruction. I had a problem with power distribution, David explained. I was struggling with it for days. I woke up one morning and Flickr had redesigned this whole section. It works better than my original plan. The insect navigator clicked thoughtfully. If what you say is true, this changes everything we know about dragons. They have always attacked when we encounter them. We assumed they were mindless beasts defending territory. Maybe they were defending territory, David said. But that doesn't make them mindless. Maybe they attacked because you were invading their homes. Did anyone ever try talking to them? Helping them? No, Oren admitted. We saw the aggression and classified them as non-sapient fauna. It is standard protocol. Your protocol is wrong, David said. At least about dragons. Prism's crystalline body seemed to shimmer as it processed this information. I have been scanning the dragon throughout this demonstration. Its neural activity patterns are consistent with higher cognitive function. Problem solving, memory formation, even what might be emotional responses. This is not a clever animal. This is a sapient being. Flickr chose that moment to walk over to David and lean against his leg. The gesture was so casual, so trusting, that David felt his chest tighten with emotion. He rested a hand on the dragon's head. The question remains, Captain Oren said, what do we do now? If dragons are sapient, we have potentially committed grave errors in judgment. And if this one's family comes looking for it, they may not be as friendly as this hatchling. As if summoned by the words, the insect navigator's communication device chirped urgently. It checked the readout, and its mandibles clacked in distress. Captain, our sensors are detecting multiple large thermal signatures approaching from the north. Flying creatures. Big ones. David felt his blood run cold. How many? 5 signatures. They will be here in approximately 10 minutes. Captain Oren made a decision. Everyone back to the ship. Now, we cannot risk a confrontation with adult dragons. I'm not leaving Flickr, David said immediately. Then you will die, the navigator said bluntly. Adult dragons are enormous. They breathe fire hot enough to melt hull plating. If they view us as threats, we cannot defend ourselves. What if they're not coming to attack? David argued. What if they're coming for Flickr? They've been searching for their lost hatchling. Maybe my signal led them here. That is speculation, Prism said. So, is assuming they'll attack, David shot back. Flickr was looking north now, standing very still. The dragon's tail swished slowly. Not aggressively, more like anticipation or nervousness. I'm staying, David said firmly. If they're Flickr's family, then this is a reunion. If they attack, well, maybe I can buy you time to take off. That is foolish, Captain Oren said. Maybe, but it's my choice. David looked at Flickr. Our choice. The shapes appeared on the horizon, growing larger by the second. 5 massive dragons, each one easily 10 times Flickr's size. Their wings blotted out the sun as they approached. The ground trembled when they landed, their weight shaking the crystal formations. David stood his ground, one hand on Flickr's back. The dragon chirped softly, a sound David had never heard before, almost like a greeting. The largest dragon, covered in deep bronze scales, stepped forward. Its eyes were the same golden color as Flickr's, but ancient and knowing. It looked at the hatchling, then at David, then at the structures they had built together, and then it spoke. The sound that came from the bronze dragon was not words in any language David knew. It was a series of deep rumbles and tonal shifts that resonated in his chest. But the meaning was somehow clear, not through language, but through intention, through the weight of intelligence behind the sound. Flickr responded with similar vocalizations, higher pitched, but carrying the same deliberate quality. The 2 dragons were communicating. The bronze dragon stepped closer, lowering its massive head to examine Flickr. Gentle despite its size, it sniffed the hatchling carefully. The inspection focused on Flickr's wing, the one that had been injured. The adult dragon made a questioning sound. Flickr chirped and gestured with one claw toward David. The bronze dragon's golden eyes shifted to the human. David fought the urge to run. This creature could kill him with one breath. Instead, he stood still and met its gaze. The dragon rumbled again. It looked at the camp, at the signal amplifier, at the various tools and structures scattered around. Then it looked back at David with an expression that seemed almost like understanding. "I helped Flicker," David said, knowing the dragon couldn't understand English, but hoping his tone conveyed meaning. The ship crashed. Flicker was hurt. "I helped." Behind him, he heard Captain Oren's voice, low and urgent. "David, back away slowly. Do not make sudden movements." David ignored the advice. He knelt down and picked up a piece of crystal, one of the building blocks he and Flicker had used. He held it out to the bronze dragon. "We built things together." Flicker learned. "Taught me too." The dragon's eyes narrowed, studying the crystal. Then it looked at Flicker again. The hatchling chirped excitedly and ran to the signal amplifier. Flicker pointed at different parts, making sounds that varied in pitch and rhythm. Explaining. The hatchling was explaining how they built it. The bronze dragon listened, head tilted. When Flicker finished, the adult made a long, contemplative rumble. Then it did something unexpected. It walked to David's salvage pile and carefully picked through the components with one massive claw. After a moment, it selected a piece of metal and brought it to David. David took it, confused. The dragon rumbled and gestured with its head toward the amplifier. Was it asking a question? David looked at the metal piece. It would actually work well as a reinforcement for the amplifier's main support. "You want to know if this would help?" David asked. He carried the piece to the amplifier and held it up to the support beam. "Yes, this would make it stronger." "Good choice." The dragon made a sound that might have been satisfaction. Behind David, he heard Prism's crystalline voice. "Extraordinary." It understood the function and suggested an improvement. "Captain, we are witnessing genuine intelligence." The other 4 dragons had spread out around the camp, examining everything with obvious curiosity. One, with scales the color of midnight, was studying the puzzle box that Flicker had solved. Another, green and gold, was inspecting the shelter David had built. Captain Oren stepped forward cautiously, approaching David's position. "This is unprecedented. Dragons have never shown this kind of behavior before. They have always been hostile. Maybe because you never gave them a chance," David said quietly. "You saw them as threats, and they responded in kind." The bronze dragon turned its attention to Captain Oren. It studied the alien carefully, then made a series of sounds. The dragon was trying to communicate. Oren looked helpless. "I cannot understand," the captain admitted. David had an idea. He grabbed a flat piece of hull, plating, and a piece of charcoal from his fire pit. Quickly, he drew a simple picture. A stick-figure human, next to a small dragon, next to a ship. He showed it to the bronze dragon. "This is how Flicker and I met." The dragon looked at the drawing with clear interest. It rumbled thoughtfully, then reached out with one claw. Carefully, incredibly carefully for such a massive creature, it scratched marks into the dirt beside David's drawing. The marks were crude but deliberate. A large dragon, several small dragons, and what might have been a mountain. "Family," David breathed. "You're Flicker's family. You were separated." The dragon rumbled in what sounded like agreement. It made more marks in the dirt, this time showing the small dragon separated from the others, with marks that might indicate searching. Flicker moved close to the bronze dragon and made soft, sad sounds. The adult wrapped one wing around the hatchling in a gesture that looked unmistakably like a hug. Family reunion. They had found each other. "Captain," Prism said urgently, "I'm detecting a pattern in the dragon vocalizations. They are not random. There is structure, grammar, complexity. This is language. They have language. Can you translate?" Oren asked. "Not yet, but given time and data, perhaps." Prism approached the dragons carefully. "This changes everything. If dragons are sapient, if they possess language and culture, then we have been treating an intelligent species as animals. The Galactic Council must be informed immediately." The bronze dragon watched this exchange. It turned back to David and made a questioning sound while gesturing between Flicker and the sky. David understood. "You want to know if Flicker can stay with me, or if Flicker goes with you?" He looked at the hatchling. His friend. His partner. "That's not my choice to make. It's Flicker's." He knelt down and looked the small dragon in the eyes. "Flicker, this is your family. They've been looking for you. You can go with them. It's okay. I won't be mad." Flicker looked at the bronze dragon, then at David. The hatchling made a distressed sound, moving between the two, wanting both. David understood that feeling. The bronze dragon rumbled and moved closer to David. It lowered its head until it was level with the human. This close, David could see the intelligence burning in those ancient eyes. The dragon opened its mouth and exhaled gently. Not fire, but warm breath that smelled like stone and sky. Then the dragon did something that made Captain Orn gasp. It reached up with one claw and plucked a scale from its own chest, bronze and gleaming, as large as David's palm. The dragon placed the scale carefully in David's hands. "What does this mean?" David whispered. Prism's voice was filled with awe. "In every culture I have studied, giving part of oneself is a gesture of deepest respect, of trust. I believe that dragon just honored you." The bronze dragon stepped back and made a long series of sounds to the other adults. They responded, gathering closer. Then the bronze dragon made sounds to Flicker. A question. Flicker looked at David, then at the dragon family, then back at David. The hatchling made a sound that rose and fell in pitch. An answer. The bronze dragon rumbled in what sounded like approval. It turned to Captain Orin and made deliberate sounds while gesturing to the survey ship, to the camp, to the dragons. "I think," David said slowly, "it's trying to negotiate." Over the next 2 hours, a strange and wonderful thing happened. Using drawings in the dirt, gestures, and careful observation, David became a bridge between two intelligent species trying to understand each other. The bronze dragon, whom David started thinking of as elder based on its obvious authority, would make symbols in the dirt. David would interpret them and explain to Captain Orin. Then Orin would respond. David would draw his interpretation, and Elder would consider it. The process was slow and imperfect, but meaning began to emerge. "They have a settlement," David explained after one particularly complex exchange. "In the mountains, 3 days' flight from here. They thought Flicker died in a territorial dispute with another dragon clan. They've been searching ever since." Elder rumbled and made more marks. A circle with lines radiating outward. "This signal," David said, pointing at the amplifier. "When I activated it, they heard it. Not with ears, I think. Some other sense. It led them here." Captain Orin looked at Prism. "Can dragons detect electromagnetic radiation?" "It would explain much," Prism chimed, "including why they destroyed communication arrays at the colonies. They may have been responding to what they perceived as threats or territorial markers." David winced. "We've been basically screaming at them in a language we didn't know existed, and they screamed back the only way they knew how." Elder watched this exchange with keen intelligence. The dragon gestured to Flicker, then to David, then made a sweeping motion that encompassed the camp and the survey ship. A question. "What happens now?" David translated. He looked at Flicker. "The choice is yours, friend. You can go home with your family, or you can come with me, or maybe something else entirely." Flicker chirped and began making marks in the dirt. The hatchling drew symbols that David had taught it, mixed with new ones. A human and a dragon, side by side. Then lines connecting to more humans and more dragons. A bridge between them. "Flicker wants both," David said softly. "Both families." Elder rumbled deeply. The dragon drew a new symbol. A structure, like a building, with humans on one side and dragons on the other. A meeting place. Captain Orin's ears perked forward with interest. "Is it suggesting what I think it's suggesting?" "First contact," Prism said with wonder. "Not violent confrontation, not misunderstanding, but genuine diplomatic first contact between species." David felt his heart race. "You want to establish communication? Trade? Cooperation?" Elder rumbled affirmatively and gestured to the signal amplifier again. The dragon made building motions with its claws. "They want to help build," David said. "Not just communicate. They want to work together, like Flicker and I did." The midnight scaled dragon approached, carrying something in its claws. It was a chunk of crystal, but unlike any David had seen in this forest. It glowed with internal light and felt warm to the touch when the dragon offered it. "What is this?" David asked. Elder made marks showing the crystal generating power. "Energy source." The dragons knew about technology. They understood it. They just approached it differently than other species. "Captain," David said urgently, "this could change everything. Not just for dragons, but for everyone. A new species joining the galactic community. New perspectives, new knowledge." Orin was quiet for a long moment. Then the captain stepped forward and addressed Elder directly, speaking slowly and clearly. "We wish to apologize for our past actions. We did not understand. Will you allow us to try again? To build friendship instead of walls." Elder listened to the tone, even if it couldn't understand the words. The dragon looked at Flicker, who chirped encouragingly. Then Elder rumbled and extended one massive claw toward Captain Orin. Orin hesitated only a moment before reaching out and touching the offered claw. The gesture was awkward, a handshake between species with vastly different anatomies. But the meaning was universal. "Prism," Orin said, "send a message to the Galactic Council. We have made first contact with a sapient species. Prepare for formal diplomatic procedures. And someone give me a xenolinguist who can start decoding dragon language." The crystalline being shimmered with excitement. This will be the most significant first contact in a generation. Over the following days, the camp transformed. Dragons and aliens worked side by side, initially cautious but growing more comfortable with each passing hour. The dragons demonstrated their construction techniques, using crystal harmonics and thermal control in ways that amazed Prism. In return, the survey crew shared their technology, showing how different tools worked. Flicker was in the middle of everything, translating when possible, encouraging cooperation always. The hatchling had become what David never expected, an ambassador. David found himself building a new structure with Elder's help. Not a signal amplifier this time, but a proper meeting hall. A place where both species could gather and learn from each other. The dragon's strength and David's technical knowledge combined to create something neither could have built alone. "You know," David said while fitting support beams into place, "a month ago, I was just a cargo hauler trying to survive. Now I'm building the foundation for interspecies cooperation. Life is strange." Flicker chirped from nearby, sounding amused. The hatchling had grown noticeably in the past weeks, scales brighter, movements more confident. But those golden eyes still held the same warmth when looking at David. Captain Orin approached, looking tired but satisfied. "The council has approved the establishment of a permanent embassy here. They're sending diplomats, scientists, cultural experts. This moon is about to get very busy." "And me?" David asked. "You have been offered a position as human liaison to the dragon species. If you want it. The pay is excellent, and you will be making history." David looked at the meeting hall taking shape before him. He looked at Flicker, who was teaching a young survey technician how to properly arrange crystal components. He looked at Elder, who watched everything with patient wisdom. "I want it," David said. "Someone needs to make sure we do this right, that we see each other as equals, not as curiosities or threats." "That someone is you," Orin agreed. "You saw sapience when we saw danger. You built trust when we built walls. Flicker chose well when it chose you as family." That night, David sat by a fire with Flicker curled beside him. The other dragons had made temporary nests nearby. Stars wheeled overhead, bright and clear. "We did good work," David said quietly, running a hand over Flicker's scales. "You and me, we built more than structures. We built understanding." Flicker made a contented sound and rested its head on David's leg. In the firelight, the dragon's scales caught and reflected the flames like living gems. David thought about the journey that had brought them here. A crash, an injury, a choice to help rather than fear. And from those simple beginnings, everything had changed. He had taught a dragon to build things, never knowing he was building something far more important. Trust, friendship, a bridge between worlds that lie in the distance. Elder rumbled along, complex vocalization. The other dragons responded in harmony. Song, David realized. They were singing. And somehow, even without understanding the words, he understood the meaning. Welcome. Hope. Tomorrow. Flicker joined the song with a younger voice, but no less genuine. David listened and felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Purpose. home that he had crashed on this moon expecting to wait for rescue. Instead, he had found a family he never knew he needed. And together, human and dragon had proven that intelligence comes in many forms. That cooperation beats conflict. That sometimes the best way to survive is to help someone else survive first. The fire crackled. The dragons sang, and David smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new opportunities to build. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. He had taught a dragon to build things. And in doing so, he had helped build the future.